Hello, everyone.
Welcome to the Queers of Time podcast.
I'm Matt.
I'm James.
I'm Kenny.
And I'm Kat.
And this is a podcast to talk about all the gay stuff in the Wheel of Time.
Because we're gay and we like the Wheel of Time. And as always, thank you to our fellow Venator of Serene, Charlie, Lurks, and John. I always have half a second where I'm like, who are the people
Who are they? Yes.
giving us money every month a lot? Anyway, thank you very much for the support. Always very much appreciated.
Thank you. So, today we have a special guest. She is the senior TV editor at Collider, and she's the author of a book, A Regency Guide to Modern Life, Carly Lane Perry, who is a avid Wheel of Time fan and who we've been in communication with and just hung out with it up the past few Jordan Cons. So we thought it'd be fun to have her on the show.
Yeah, I'm excited to be here.
We're excited to have you.
I think we can start with a disclaimer: is that we planned that discussion for a few weeks, and then the cancellation of the Wheel of Time came up yesterday. So. Hey, this is fresh for us.
The vibes might be a little different today.
Fresh.
A little fresh, but still, I think we can make it a fun episode. I think we can do it. I believe in us.
I don't think there's a single Queers of Time episode that isn't at least fun for
That's
a few
fair.
minutes of it. So
For some people.
yeah.
For at least a few minutes. There's at least a few minutes where you can... Oh my god.
I guess we could start asking you, what was your Wheel of Time story? Because, the first episode we had on the Queer of Time, we were sharing our Wheel of Time story, but how did you get into the Wheel of Time, Karen?
Yeah, it's funny. I think I've told a variation of this elsewhere, so if people have heard it before, apologies. I'm going to repeat myself. I'll try to tell it a little bit differently, but I grew up loving fantasy as a kid. I mean, I was such a voracious reader, and so I would spend hours upon hours borrowing books at the library, to the point where the librarian at one point, I think, asked my mom, is she going to read all of those? And my mom was like, yes, and she'll be back next week for a whole nother stack. So despite the fact that I was reading a lot, and despite the fact that I would often kind of wander into the adult section and was probably borrowing books that were a little too mature for me, and was borrowing a lot of doorstopper fantasy stuff, completely overlooked Wheel of Time somehow. I don't really know how it happened, because I was reading a lot of other stuff, Lord of the Rings and Terry Brooks and a bunch of different kind of classic, who we think of as sort of
the staples.
Yeah, and but Wheel of Time we never crossed paths. I say we it's an entity or something.
At this point, it's kind of an entity. I'm sorry.
It kind of is.
So cut to, I don't know how many years, I mean, it's 20 plus years later. We won't get into what my age is now, but, and I'm, now I'm a TV critic and reviewing shows, and knew that Amazon was going to be adapting the books into a show, and kind of pulled rank as the senior editor to be I'm reviewing this show. I claimed it pretty, when we knew that it was coming out and, could review it. So then it was watching the show through screeners, obviously, and being in a position where I couldn't talk to anyone about how good the show was yet. But then also sort of being oh yeah, this is a book series. Maybe I should read the books. And I'll preface this by saying I don't always do this for every book adaptation that I'm watching. I've done it now most recently with Murderbot. I'm reading the Murderbot series. I read the first book just because first novella, just because that's what season 1 is adapting. So it kind of helps to have that and sort of see where the show diverges. And I did it a little bit in the opposite direction with Wheel, where I watched all of season 1. I think they had sent all of season 1 ahead of time, most of it. And then I read the first book after. So it kind of was you can see the places where they made changes and condensed, and in many cases made better changes to kind of keep things rolling. And then season 2 came out and I was sort of on pace. I wasn't trying to read ahead of where the show was for season 2. And then by season 3, I had just kept reading like in the off season. So now, as of now, I'm halfway through book 7.
Okay.
So I'm halfway through the halfway point.
Okay.
So that's where I'm at. But I just kept reading in the break between 2 and 3. And then I was like, I'm going to be beyond the show at this point. So I just accepted the fact that I was going to, but it actually really helped to sort of have, at least be a little bit ahead of, where the show got to, just to see, you had familiarity with things like the Battle of the Two Rivers and, and all this stuff in the Waste, and having that knowledge of where they were, seeing how things were adapted and modified. And so, yeah, that in a nutshell is sort of my overall journey. And, now that we're sitting here, about 24 hours after the news broke,
Yeah.
as of now, there may not be more show. I mean, I have every intention of finishing the books.
Mm-hmm.
It's just, it's also a matter of, I'm trying to be better about keeping up with reading, because I'm the kind of person sometimes where I get so sucked into having to engage in one medium that I will forget about other things. And so there'll be periods where like I'm watching a lot of TV and I'm listening to a lot of podcasts, but I'm not reading a lot.
Yeah.
Or I'm, playing a lot of video games and reading a lot of books, but then I'm not caught up on TV. So, because there's so much that you can, engage with and absorb. Yeah. So now I'm trying to be a little bit more intentional about getting back to reading. Because it's one of those things that's actually sort of a nice break from looking at screens, like having a physical book in your lap and, not paying attention to the world and how on fire everything feels.
Right.
So.
Yeah, seriously.
Yeah. I was, so I was sort of wondering, like, with the cancellation and everything. So you've been to Jordan Con twice, right?
Mm-hmm.
So now you've watched the show and you're midway through the 7th book. Have you enjoyed getting into the fandom? Like, what's your fandom experience like? Because I feel like you're sort of integrated into the fandom at this point.
Yeah, I mean, I'll also preface this by saying there have been other experiences I've had with fandoms that have been much less welcoming.
Thanks.
That was never. I will not name names. But you kind of get. I won't say you get in the trenches, but I think sometimes when you meet a certain corner of a fandom, and look, for context, I started out on the internet in fandom.
Mm-hmm.
Like before I was a TV writer, editor, writing professionally for a living, I think I was 11 years old and I stumbled into a Star Wars Yahoo group on, and it was for female fans of Star Wars. And so it was the early years of my kind of internet wanderings in the era of dial-up.
I remember those days.
Oh, yes.
I was Star Wars, Buffy, a little bit of Harry Potter, and would kind of wander in. And then I sort of found my niche in fan fiction and things like reading a lot of fanfic and talking on message boards and stuff like that. So I was in fandom circles, not to the point where, I was writing meta and look, there may be fan fiction that I've written that exists that is on AO3 that is under an account.
Who has?
I have some.
Yeah. Have I written any recently? No, but it's out there. It exists. I'll cop to
Who
that.
amongst us?
Maybe on fanfiction.net,
Yeah. Oh, 100% there is.
We're citing the old magic.
Yes.
Yep.
Exactly.
So I feel like, and maybe this is, maybe this puts me in a unique position to sort of feel like I do have somewhat of a foot in both camps, even though there are times where I do have to wear more of a critic hat than a fan hat. When it comes to doing things like interviews and reviews and whatnot, it's, I think I've sort of figured out how to really stay in my lane depending. But I do, having a fandom background, I think does give me somewhat of a different perspective than a lot of mainstream critics. Not that I would consider myself, this top voice or anything like that, not in the slightest, but I do feel like covering Wheel, the response was just overwhelmingly positive. I think one of the things that really stood out to me was how excited everybody was to have people just covering the show. Any kind of article or interview or whatever it was, people always really engaged with it super enthusiastically, even to the point where maybe not everybody agreed with, like I would review things or read a recap and like people would kind of have their own thoughts, but no one was ever disrespectful. And that has not always been the case with, look, I was in the trenches on this when covering CW shows.
Oh.
It can get, if you remember those days, things can get.
Vampire Diaries?
Yeah.
Supernatural?
Supernatural. Yeah. I mean, it was
the Super Hulock days.
I think, I could go off on a separate conversation about how I feel like fandom as a whole has really changed just because of the platforms that most people use to engage each other on. Like Twitter is just X, whatever you want to call it, is just not the place for nuanced conversation. And, I don't want to get up on a soapbox and be like, oh, things were better when everybody was on LiveJournal and could, have like write long comments to each other. But it does feel like things have shifted in a way where conversations are just different. Places where people talk about things are different. So, there's an accessibility to creatives and actors that did not always exist. Being able to talk to people that are on a show or write on a show, like that was unheard of. I mean, if you wanted to talk to Chris Carter, about the X-Files and, wanting Mulder and Scully to get together, you had to send a letter into the studio. So maybe I'm like aging myself to a point, but, it's fascinating to me to kind of see the ways in which fandoms have evolved in that sense. And so when you're covering certain things, I mean, look, I'll also add that from the perspective of wanting to give attention to a show and champion a show, it makes such a huge difference to have a fandom that is sharing your work and not just screenshotting it and posting it on the internet without linking back to your story. Because the reality is, at the end of the day, we serve the traffic gods and Google. And so if things don't get the numbers that they are supposed to, then we have to make the really tough call to not cover a show anymore.
Yeah.
And I will just say that was never a problem with the Wheel of Time.
That was a question I had.
Literally. And I will say, yesterday when the news broke, somebody that I work with was like, oh man, what a loss for us in terms of a show that was always a huge performer. I mean, that's sort of boiling it down to the numbers, but just because everybody was always so supportive, the fandom was always so supportive and passionate and engaged with everything. And just respectful, in a way that I think a lot of fandoms, more modern fandoms, maybe have sort of not focused on or maybe have abandoned, So
sometimes they forget that people on the other side are still people.
Yeah. There's, and I don't think it's any secret that, getting out away from your computer and being in person with people. I mean, even at JordanCon, and I think you all can speak to this as well, you were able to have better discussions about certain creative decisions that the show made that, people had negative feelings about, but it felt very productive in a way that, screaming at somebody on Blue Sky or Twitter just never would be. So
yeah, one of my favorite memories from last year was being on panels at JordanCon. And it was just, you're right. It's a completely different vibe. It's a completely different experience. Just I think actually seeing someone and seeing there's a human being that you are talking to with their own viewpoint of things, at which is valid. They can have their, aside from harmful ones, but that's a different category.
Yeah.
But people have different opinions and they have reasons for those different opinions and motivations for those different opinions. And it was nice to just be in a room with by and large, the most part, people just wanted to talk about Wheel of Time and they were just really excited about it. And that's really, I think that really carries through for the most part with the online fandom as well, where it's just we just really like this show. We just really like these books. We love these characters. We're just excited. We're just excited to be here, honestly. I think that's kind of the vibe.
We're just happy to be here.
We're just happy to be here.
I mean, from the start, this fandom has been whenever there was an interview about actors, there was playlists about all of the interviews that had come out. There was playlists about people reacting to the shows. There was like, sharing articles. It's like whenever someone was shining a light on those fantasy, like very big fantasy books and the TV shows that came out of it, we're like, hey, we are there. It's good. You should join us. Join the cult.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, and it's, I mean, one of the first sort of online fandom experiences that I had was Lord of the Rings and Tolkien and everything like that. And that was my gateway fantasy experience. And I remember being online when the movies were coming out. And that was, my God, that was an interesting experience. It's fascinating to see the difference in opinion now versus then. And seeing how, rightfully, how well loved these movies have become. When the movies were first being announced and like details were coming out, it was a minefield. It was a minefield. It was like when people found out that Gloria Findell wasn't going to be in the movie. Oh my God! It was like, it was like someone, like our firstborn child had been killed or something like that. I say our, but someone's firstborn child had been killed. But I think and obviously there are exceptions to this, but I think for the most part with Wheel of Time, people have just been so joyful and just happy to see all of these characters sort of come to life. And I still remember the day of getting like the casting news of the Emmonsfield 5 and seeing, like, being able to sort of visualize who these characters were going to be and become, and it was just it was so exciting. And so
it was,
yeah, it's this fandom, I think it's special. There's something special about it.
I mean, they are definitely part of that fandom that are to throw to the bin. Like we can't just forget that when the cast got announced, a lot of people had issues.
Oh yes.
We have been very good at ignoring those people.
We don't claim them, though.
We don't claim them.
Yeah.
Yes.
We do know that some people cheered the cancellation news yesterday. So
of course they did. Well,
that's their business. They're wrong.
And this is the thing. Like, I'm very much of the belief, if there is a show that I don't vibe with, I just avoid it, and I just do this crazy radical thing and just don't talk about it. It's so easy.
Yeah, you would think.
It is shockingly easy to do. I just don't engage. I don't talk about it. If people like it, more power to you. I want you to like the things that you like. And, it's always kind of strange to me when people, if you don't like Wheel of Time, okay, you don't have to, no one's making you watch it. You don't have to. Just read the books.
Or if you go to their like profile, that's one of my personal metrics, is if someone comes into my mentions and is clearly trying to start a fight, I will sometimes click on their profile, and everything that they've engaged with recently is just arguing with someone about, or being negative in response to someone's positivity. I'm like, first of all, who has the time and energy to solely dedicate your online presence to just being negative in someone else's mentions? Secondly, that tells me everything I need to know. So you're not interested in having a conversation. So that's really what just will lead me to, not engage. I mean, I'm with you, Kat. Like, I think I've gotten to the point where I just know that I'm going to see people, especially people that are peers of mine, whose opinions I don't agree with when it comes to shows, and that's fine. Everyone's entitled to their opinion, but I say this to my husband all the time. Like, maybe I've just gotten to the point where I'm tired, in general, but if I see someone saying something I don't agree with, I either scroll past or I mute them. And it's, and this even applies to people that I follow as mutuals. Sometimes you just take a break from that person.
Yes.
It's fine.
Yeah.
You don't need to look, and you don't need to engage. I don't see the value in, and then there are the people that will say like, oh, well, you're in an echo chamber and blah, 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 blah. You're not open to hearing other opinions. I'm like, but this is my corner of the internet. I can curate it the way I want to. This is my feed, and I don't really, there's no point in, starting up. So life's too short. Like, what's the point, So
things are terrible enough.
That's my philosophy.
And also, like, echo chambers talking about TV shows. Like, it's a different thing than being on an echo chamber talking about politics, for example. Like, I understand that, like, you do need to see outside of your bubble for some specific topic. But when it's about a TV show, it's fine to just look at the things you like and just move on from everything else.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I'm a very big proponent of sometimes even mutuals, you just need to put them in a little timeout. For your own, you need to protect your peace. You just need to put them in just a little timeout, and that's fine. It's not a problem. It doesn't mean you don't like them. It doesn't mean that you don't agree with other things that they say. It's just that sometimes they just need a little timeout. And then time passes and you're like, you know what? I think it's okay now. And it usually is. And that's fine.
Sometimes I want to put myself in a timeout and I just log out.
Sometimes I can feel myself being very annoying. And I'm just like, you know what? I hope that people are muting me right now. Because I wish I could mute me right now, but that's not an option. So, what are you going to do?
Yeah. So Carly, I guess we can't really avoid the elephant in the room, but now that the show has been canceled, and it could get picked up by a different network, but
good.
Regardless of that, do you see yourself like staying around, coming to future Jordan cons, hanging out?
Yeah. I mean, I said as much on Blue Sky the other day, even if this might be, I got a little hokey, but I was like, even if this is the end of this turning of the wheel. Yeah, I mean, it's funny. I guess I'm more surprised that I didn't go to Jordan Con sooner, because I am local to the area. So it's literally just a matter of me hopping in a car and driving over. So yeah, I mean, I can see myself coming back, and I think it's more about the people that you meet and kind of have connections with and enjoy having conversations with that is just as important as, having a show to talk about. But
yeah, I feel the same. Like, I mean, I was a fan before the show, like just right before the show. But sometimes when I go to Jordan Con, it's like, okay, I how many times can I hear episode 3 of season whatever broken down? But it's more of what keeps me coming back is the people. I mean, and the panels are fresh every year, but like the people are what really keep me coming back, because it's just so rejuvenating to be around people that you can like share love of something with, because sharing love of something is not so common in the world today.
Yeah.
So one thing we could talk about, so season 3 was out like a month ago, and Wheel of Time didn't have much luck in terms of season 1, season 2, season 3. Like, they got COVID, they got strikes, they got whatever is going on with the economy right now. And I kind of was curious about how your experience covering season 3 was different from like season 1 and season 2. Whether there was like a stark difference or not. Well, for season 2, I'm expecting a big difference.
Yeah, I mean, I almost feel like covering the show, it was different in the sense that everybody, at least when I was like working and kind of networking with, the publicists and everything, it felt like we had more access than previous seasons. More people being offered, more opportunities to talk to cast. They were always really cool about us reaching out to talent independently if we wanted to. So that's how I ended up getting long interviews. But I as someone who did interviews from the very first season, everybody was really cool about. I mean, I definitely even got an email from a publicist more than once that was like, "Thank you so much for supporting the show." So I think they were really appreciative of the fact that we were coming to junkets and interviewing cast and everything. And I could just tell too, having talked to this cast and Rafe and people involved since the beginning. I mean, the cast was more settled with every season. Every time you talk to them, you could just see they were more and more comfortable talking about things and more settled in the characters, and deeply passionate about the show and always really generous with their time. But I mean, also when you hear things like they had to shut season 1 down 4 times because of the pandemic, you're like, oh, so it's a miracle would this show even happened,
right?
Yeah, seriously.
And then season 2 with the strikes, and it kind of puts into perspective how much has been going against this show from the beginning. Like, it's a miracle we got 3 seasons, much less 1. So yeah, but everybody was always really kind, and every week they would send an email out and say, we have these people if you want to talk to them. So I mean, my experience was every season, it felt like we were getting more and more access. And they were always really accommodating, at least the publicity team, with as trying to give us as much time as they could with people. So that was, I mean, that's always a huge benefit. The more, you don't have to talk to somebody for 5 minutes. Yes. You can get, if even 15 is like so much better than 5. Yeah. So yeah, everybody was always really kind and generous in that way. So it felt like it was more so with every season, as, you could just tell that there was so much passion into it too. So that was my experience, to be honest.
So what were some of your favorite moments from covering the show?
Anytime I got to do really long interviews, because first of all, I hate doing, this isn't specific to this show, I hate doing pre-air interviews where you can't get into spoilers and you always have to ask really vague questions and they can't talk about anything. So when I was doing interviews specifically for something like season 3, I watched episodes and then was asking, the first 2, I think they let us watch. And then when I asked the actors questions, they were specifically about those episodes. And, and then obviously you don't put them out until the episodes are out because you can get in trouble otherwise. But
right.
That's why I was always a fan of doing what we call postmortems too, which are interviews that are designed to run right after an episode where you can really do a deep dive with whoever, director, writer, cast. So that was always something that I was such a huge fan of. I mean, I will say it was a personal thrill to have Rosamund Pike tell me that it was really nice to talk to somebody who clearly has such love and respect for the books, which I think sometimes when they have to sit through those junket interviews where they're just having journalists, a constant revolving door of journalists come in, many of them who haven't read the books and don't know the source material, it can be challenging. So I'm sure that it was nice to have it. More than once I had someone tell me, you're like, you really know the books. I was like, well, I know some of the books. It's not that extreme, but really long interviews. I think personal highlights would be having 45 minutes to an hour with Marcus Rutherford to really break down the Two Rivers episode one-on-one. We had a really lovely conversation. Daniel Henney, I profiled him during season 3, so we had another really long conversation. I just like the times where I'm able to really sit and chat with somebody at length and really get into sort of the nitty gritty. Like talking to Sharon about as many costumes as I could was also a highlight, just because there's so much work and, intricate detail that goes into that stuff. And I'm such a nerd for really doing deep dives. So anytime you get to do that is it's a professional highlight, to be honest. So
that's awesome.
That does sound fun. Yeah, Rosamund really knows her stuff.
She's on it.
She's terrifying. I will tell you in the years that I've been doing this, which it's only been about 10 years really. But so within the last decade or so, there are times that you are definitely a little bit more intimidated to talk to somebody. And you can get over your nerves pretty quick, because honestly, once you're talking to someone, you're like, oh, this is just a person, it's a human being. So the nerves wear off pretty quickly. Rosamund Pike is someone who checked me on a fact, a Wheel of Time fact pretty early on during season 2.
Of course.
I misspoke, and I think I said something about Moraine being stilled instead of shielded, and she immediately snapped to and very quickly corrected me. And ever since then I've had to be on my toes with her, because she knows her stuff. She will correct you immediately. And so that's honestly why it was so personally gratifying for her to say the nice thing in season 3. Cause I was nice. Mother approves. Yes.
That will be such a huge compliment.
Absolutely.
During Jordan Con, or the Criterion Collection, which is, for listeners, it's a collection of or it's a company that distributes movies from Academy Award winners to more obscure art house films, and they have a closet and they have actors and TV and movie people come in and talk and about their favorite movies. And Rosamund Pike just walks into it and immediately just starts talking about cinema history and just picks up random movies and rattles off 15 facts about this movie and why it's so important to her. And it's okay, you are a brilliant and terrifying person who really knows her craft.
Yep.
Yeah, I think that's kind of what makes the show and the fandom so unique too. It's that everyone involved with making the show just seems utterly delightful and enamored with the series. Like, you can tell they just have such a deep love and respect for this series and these characters. And I think it makes the fandom even more, like, vibrant, I think, because we kind of vibe off of that. And just, I'm just thinking back to us getting to chat with Rafe, and it was so obvious how much he loves the series. Like, it's obvious that he has a deep love for the series and the characters, and whether we agree with decisions or not, it doesn't change the fact that they are first and foremost coming from a place of love and respect for the series, and it's really nice to hear that is also your experience with interviewing them too. That they know things, and sometimes to be fact checked by Rosamund Pike, I think would be terrifying.
Yeah.
Oh yeah,
that would terrify me. It would thrill me, but also terrify me.
And I would never forget that fact again.
Never again.
No.
That would be seared into my brain.
Yeah. During the, I think it got edited out of our season 3 interview with Yosha, when I was talking to the two of them, I brought up a moment from the trailer between Moraine and Lan, because I was the question about, the season have really kind of having this theme of alternate futures and like things that may or may not happen, and that's a theme that we see consistently throughout 3, especially not just with Ruidian, but like in the Rings, but Egwene's accepted test, things like that. You're kind of seeing like futures that Rand going mad and all these things, or Rand and Moraine bonding in more ways than one, or we won't go into it, but I asked the question, and Rosamund goes, "That's not in the first 2 episodes." And I was like, "No, it's in the trailer." And she was like, "Oh, the trailer." But there was a moment when she like kind of caught, I was like, "She's going to get me again." I was like, "No, it's in the trailer where she says, 'I've seen 1,000 futures' to Lan." Mm-hmm. She knew that I had seen the first 2 episodes at that point, but she's like, "That's not in the first 2 episodes." And I was like, it's not, I know it's not. I think they cut that part out, because I was like, no. I felt very I was very chastised in that moment. I was like, "No, Mother, it's not."
No, I promise. I know. I do those things.
But yes, she is. Out of everybody in the cast, she's the one that I'm like, I have to come correct, because if I don't, we're gonna be told real fast.
Yeah,
you're gonna learn.
Her energy kind of reminds me of Kate Mulgrew, who plays Catherine Janeway on Star Trek Voyager, which is one of my favorite of the Star Treks. But like it's that same sort of like intense love and passion, and almost like protectiveness, I think, for this series. And I find it terrifying and also very endearing. And I mean terrifying as like an affectionate way. Like it's a good thing.
You're like intimidating, positive. Mm-hmm. That's how I feel about Rosamund Pike.
100%.
Yeah.
Earlier, Kat, you mentioned that the love of everyone working on the show, everyone loved working on this reality show, and for me, it also helped not just understanding some of the changes, but also accepting, because since it was coming from like a places of love, and they had a bigger plan or something like that. But like a lot was changed in the show, and I kind of want to talk about like whether there was from the books you've read, a favorite change for you.
I mean, not that we're gonna get to see the end result of this, but making Rand's whole love situation more of a polycule, and not like I hate to use the term harem, but I've seen people refer to it that way. Where
that is common, yes.
Yeah, I don't love it. I mean, that's why like in romance, people don't love the trope name. But where, right, like all roads kind of led back to Rand in the books, and I'm at the point where it's definitely, I'm starting to see what's going to really build along those lines. I think as of right now, he's mostly with Min, physically, in proximity anyway, and then the other two are having their own adventures. But I'm aware of what happens. I mean, I will just say, I will say, as lovely as this fandom has been about trying not to spoil me, there are things I know about the end of the series. I spoiled myself. It's fine.
Oh no.
I know there are certain things that happen in terms of character death. It's also fine. But I'm at the point where I'm sort of like, by the time I get to that point, even if I know, it's not going to, I knew, I knew about Moraine and Lanfear in the door before I got to that point, but I still cried like a baby with Moraine's letter. You know what I mean? So it didn't diminish. I'm not the kind of person who's so precious about spoilers that I get upset. It doesn't really diminish if the writing is good in that moment, it doesn't diminish like the feelings that I'm having when I'm reading it. So, and I feel the same way about like certain things like TV and movies too. I've sort of had to accept the fact that if I can't watch everything, if I'm going to get spoiled, it's fine. So yeah, I was so excited to see Elaine and Aviendha starting to become a thing. Just because I feel like that's I know that there's been conversations about how this is a wheel of time in today's world, and the books were written in a very different time. And I think the changes that they made to sort of update, the book's original approach to things like gender and sexuality and all of that are really thoughtful. And they make sense because this isn't a Wheel of Time show in 1980. This is a Wheel of Time show in 2023, 4, 5. Right. So that's where I always felt like the show made changes that made sense for the time that the show was being made in. So that was really, that was a big one for me, though, was seeing that they were actually not, that Elaine and Aviendha could have a relationship independent of Rand, even if it seemed like the show was probably building them to the point of, a throuple or, whatever you want, a quad, whatever it was going to be eventually, and I would be curious to know if I would assume that was the case. I've heard that, Rafe has sort of alluded to the fact that he was more interested in polyamory than polygamy. So, but that was a big change. I think that I was a bigger fan of.
Yeah. A lot of people complained about the diversity. I'm not even going to use that W word.
Yeah.
Oh, yes.
The diversity of the characters. But so there's sort of two aspects I like thinking about with this, because you have for lack of a better term, the reactionary conservative people. On the one hand, they're complaining about these changes, but they forget that the books were very progressive for their time, and Robert Jordan wrote them to be progressive for their time. And I think what a lot of people more on the more contemporary side don't realize is that, there's aspects of the books that are very dated, and we should, discuss why they're dated. But I think some people go a little too gung-ho when saying that Robert Jordan needs to be corrected, because they forget that he was progressive for his time, and we may think that we're progressive, but we are progressive for our time too. Right. What that we say 20 years from now will now sound dated and weird. So I think he would appreciate the updating of the spirit of what he was going for.
Yeah. One of the things that, and I don't remember who I heard this from, that I always think about is you don't know what you don't know. And I think I've seen people who I would say are smarter than me in this area say that Robert Jordan was writing from the perspective that he knew, but he also was doing things. I think you could see that attempts were made in terms of being more inclusive. You are. I think I would agree, Matt. I think you're limited in sort of the time that you grow up in, and you're limited to the circumstances that you grew up in your perspective. But I also think you can see where attempts were made in terms of broadening that perspective. And I think the books. There's things that those books were doing for the time that were progressive. Yeah. So, but along those same lines, I mean, you take what that did, what the books were doing, and then you progress that further for the show, right? So I think, there maybe the language to describe things in the books wasn't always available, but we had that language by the time the show came out. So I think I don't look at it as, I almost look at it as taking what the attempt was and sort of like the baton was being passed, and then the show was going a little bit further. Yeah,
I like that.
Yeah, and I think one other thing that a lot of people comment on when they're first starting the show, especially, is the amount of women that are featured on it, and the amount of middle-aged women specifically that are featured on it.
Yeah,
which is kind of unheard of.
Mm-hmm.
I think especially just generally speaking in lots of genres, but I think especially in sci-fi fantasy, you don't really see it. And I think both the books and the show were very unique in this, where, we wouldn't have what we had on the show. Oh, I said had. That made me sad a little bit. But we wouldn't have had that if the books weren't the blueprint for that, like these powerful, confident, incredible women that we saw on the show. They didn't just come from nowhere. They existed on the pages, and they were just updated in some cases or expanded on in others. Like, you think of Leandrin, who is a very two-dimensional character on the page, but on the show, it's just incredible to see. And it's, it's really exciting getting that experience of just updating things. Camille, are you okay?
I just realized that we're never going to get like the full Leandrin arc.
I know.
And I kind of wanted to see where they were going to go.
Yeah, I know. I want to preface this by saying I don't want to give people false hope. Sometimes, a lot of the times, unfortunately, campaigns to save shows doesn't work for one reason or another. It just doesn't work. I will say one of my favorite shows of all time, The Expanse, was canceled by Sci-Fi. I think it was on originally.
Yep.
And then saved by Amazon Prime and went on for a number of seasons after that.
Yeah, I mean, again, I don't want to give false hope because sometimes it happens, sometimes it doesn't. One of my favorite shows, 911, was canceled by Fox.
That's right.
Yep. And then ABC picked it up and made it gayer.
Yeah. I mean, of course they did. Of course ABC did. That tracks.
So it's not unheard of. My perspective on this is I am neither going to be pessimistic nor optimistic.
Mm-hmm.
What happens. I will appreciate the aspects of the show that I appreciated for what they were and be happy for the experience. But and if it does get picked up, that's fantastic.
Yeah. And that's why, like, even if it doesn't get picked up, I don't think it's the end of Wheel of Time. Because, like, for example, there's still the Laserbound books that are coming up. There's been, like, news sometimes of, like, I know, for example, there was a mention of a video game and thing, and we don't know where's that gonna go. The video game industry has a whole mess right now. So
that's another animal.
Yeah.
But like the books and the willingness to do something with those books is still there. So who knows what could happen, like, at some point way down the line. So
Yeah. The whole entertainment industry is just a mess.
A little bit. Unfortunately.
It's like I get so mad at the publishing, like the fiction publishing industry, and then my friends talks about the video game industry, and then I hear about the TV show. I'm like, oh my God, everything's just a shit show.
And then you hear about the journalism industry, and you're like, I don't know how I still have a job right now. Not to keep piling, but yeah, I mean, everything is just
Thanks, Chicago Sun.
I mean, you're just like, and the wild part is, I got my start with a local paper, so it's hearing about what local newspapers are going through is like kind of a gut punch for me. But even just the state of things online too is like a mess. So.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Like, and that's very much why I'm like, just shoot. I am in my protecting my peace era right now.
Same.
I'm protecting my peace. I am going to carve out, what have you, my own section of the internet where there are people that I like interacting with, and they have things that they are happy about, and there are things that they enjoy, and the negative things are to the minimum or non-existent, And not that you don't, like, I'm not saying don't talk about negative things. That's not the issue. It's just if there's something you don't like, you just avoid it, and
Yeah. Well, and I'm paraphrasing, but I always feel like I see people especially people that work in activism, they're like, you can't do anything if your tank's running on empty.
Mm-hmm.
You can't do anything until you fill your tank up first.
Yeah.
And I think doing that with positivity and surrounding yourself with things that kind of give you a boost is so important, because then that is what gives you the energy to, boots on the ground. Like, you can, participate in the things that maybe need to involve a little bit of like fighting back. So you have to sort of rejuvenate yourself too, because you're not going to help anybody if you're also running on fumes.
Yeah.
Right.
And it's so easy. I was literally just it's telling that I was interviewing somebody yesterday for a longer piece, and we were talking about the internet and activism and all that stuff, and that's what it turned to. But I think it's also just so important to find things, like find escapism too, where you can, whether that's TV, whether that's books, podcasting, whatever. Just because, then that equips, I think like that equips you to then be able to turn around and, and to fight for things that are important. But yeah, you can't do that when you're tapped out too. And it's so easy to like open your phone and open social media, and then you just see the onslaught of everything that's going on. Yeah. And then it's like, my first instinct, you open Blue Sky or X or whatever first thing in the morning, and it's like you want to just shut your phone off and go back to bed, right? Like it's so it's awful, but at the same time,
it's exhausting. Yeah.
I think it just emphasizes the importance of stuff like this, right? Talking and, applying your passion to things, and also doing things that make you feel good, as opposed to just wallowing, because that's also not going to help. So
yeah, wallowing is a fast ticket to not great mental health.
Right.
Yeah.
I don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah. No one here has ever experienced that before, right?
No one deals with severe anxiety over every decision. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I think there's, in the last few years, there's been a lot, like, it's interesting to bring in activism. There's been this sense with some people of conflating activism with entertainment or media consumption as it's, like activism or media consumption as activism. Right. And it smacks of this very performative thing. So like, if you do watch this show, you are not morally upright because of this element in the show. Or if you want to be morally upright, you have to watch this show. And it's just not a healthy or an emotionally mature way of understanding the world. I mean, media can be activism, but to like totally like sever the ability to separate those two is just it's bad.
Yeah.
It's just not conducive.
To make a show like your identity. I mean, look, I think that was sort of a thing when people would be talking about Wheel specifically, and there was a lot of how can you watch that show because it's made by Amazon? And it's like, well, look, we could get into the whole there's no ethical consumption under capitalism argument, all you want, but at the end of the day, I'm also of the belief that if watching a show causes you to think differently about an issue, or helps you expand your perception of the world, or and this doesn't just apply to Wheel. This is reading fiction. This is listening to podcasts about things that you yourself are not like well versed in. I don't think broadening your knowledge in that sense is inherently a bad thing. You're opening I think that's really what that leaves room for empathy and for understanding of other cultures and other identities and whatever else. So yes, you could get into this argument of like how watching a show on Amazon is giving Jeff Bezos money, but at the same time, it's also, there are so many more people involved with this show and making the show that are not billionaires. I think one of the things that I always try to stress is that you would be surprised by how little a lot of people involved with making a show like this actually take home, like pay wise. So,
where does the money go?
That's the question. Well, a lot of it is VFX and,
Yeah.
No, I'm not even talking about that. It's because like we know that Amazon makes money. Like Amazon does make money. Maybe not the Prime Video section, but Amazon as a whole. And also like it's impossible to boycott Amazon since we were briefly talking about that. They have like one of the main money maker of Amazon is AWS, and that's building so much of the internet you can't avoid Amazon.
Yep.
Yeah, it's just like I feel there's a lot of entertainment industry, video games and movies and this kind of thing, where you kind of wonder sometimes whether the money actually trickle down to the creative spots.
Yeah.
And that's kind of like the big issue right now.
Yeah, that's one of the things, and like that reinforces the point about like boycotting the shows. Like if we're going to do boycotts, if we're going to be activists in the entertainment sphere, we got to be a bit smart about it, because Amazon does not make most of its money from Prime streaming. They make most of their money from web hosting services. And the drop in the bucket that a few thousand people canceling their subscriptions is nothing compared to the web hosting services.
And that doesn't mean don't do it, but...
Right.
I mean, I can't sell mine because I just was only watching Vote on like Wheel of Time on that, but it's...
Well, I mean, that's fine. I mean, it's always valid to just not want to have a subscription.
Another streaming service, which...
if
I had to cull mine.
Yeah, I get it. I mean, and I'm even as somebody that sometimes gets to watch TV early, I have way too many streaming subscriptions that I probably need to cull. But yeah, it's hard. It's hard to cut ties sometimes, especially if, there's certain things that you need access to also. So it's a personal decision. I would not begrudge anyone for needing to sever ties with, a streamer or whatever, if that's what they want to do.
For
but
real.
It's also, you have to, it's a decision I think everybody has to make for themselves.
Okay. Do we want to talk about like highs of season 3? Can we talk about that a little bit?
Talk about nice moments.
Yeah, it's some nice like things that you really, and it doesn't have to be like big moments, small moments, whichever. Just things that really, I don't know, spoke to you or
that we'll remember fondly.
Yeah, we'll think of fondly. Let's start.
Hills of Tanchico.
Hills of Tanchico. I know.
That's a good one.
It's such a good one. It's so good. And and this is like some of my favorite moments for this season specifically. It wasn't, they were moments that are not even necessarily like specifically in the books, but they were still so Wheel of Time coded. Like they're still so wonderfully Wheel of Time. And that's for sure one of them. Like
that was a big one.
So delightful.
Elaine singing about boobs and not even realizing it.
Yeah.
That's Jordan would have loved that.
And like when it clicks, she's like, "Oh, I see."
Yeah.
In some alt universe where Robert Jordan lived to see this come out, he's sitting in the room nodding along to Hills of Tanchico, also having no idea that it's about boobs, because I just feel like that's the kind of. And when he figures it out, he would just do a Southern gentleman blush.
Yes, he's like, "Oh my, okay."
It's like he'll write his kinks into the books, but not on live TV. That's a step too far.
I'm fine with spanking, but I draw the line about tit songs.
Get those tits off my screen.
Yeah, Moghedien, all of Moghedien.
Oh my god.
Yeah.
It's that was a character that I was highly anticipating and squealed with delight at the end of season 2 when they dropped her in. It was just so good. And season 3 did not disappoint.
Oh no.
I was not prepared for the unhinged just joy and delight that we would get with Moghedien.
I'll just say, watching the shredding scene, the season 3 opener, and again watching it before probably a lot of other people got to see it. I mean, it's sitting in my bedroom, watching the screener going. It's still going. Like it was like, and I think I said this to Rafe because I clocked it. I was like, this is 15 minutes of an opener. Talk about something that they would never have been able to get away with in season 1. Just a 15-minute opener of these women absolutely shredding each other with the one power. Yeah. I was like, this was Wheel of Time. It's great. I love it. And then Ruidian, when I read it in the book, I was like, I cannot wait to see how the show is going to adapt this. And it was, I think it's probably top 5, if not my favorite episode of the whole show. Just from start to finish. I think it's such an achievement, but they did so much from that sequence. If anything, I think I would have wanted to see like more Ruidian, or more of the Age of Legends stuff, because I'm such a nerd. Anytime I get an Age of Legends thing in either in the book or the show, I get so excited. I'm like, oh, we got the sci-fi part coming out. Yep. It's so good.
It's so exciting.
So yeah, that for me it was a highlight for sure. I think was it episode 6, right? So just 6 from start to finish was
Ruidian?
Was it 6?
Ruidian was 4.
5. 4. It was 5.
It was episode 4.
It's terrible that I don't remember which number now.
They all blend together after.
It was episode 4.
Was it episode 4?
Yeah, okay. Episode 5 was All the Dream with Egwene.
You're right.
Wow, we were so off base.
Oofa doofa.
Which also made me cry. Episode.
Oh yeah,
I cried at Hopper, by the way.
Oh yeah.
That was actually one of my highlights, like the whole dream sequence with Egwene visiting her friend's dream. Yeah. And yes, there's consent issues there, I know, but It was a very beautiful sequence, and I really liked that.
Yeah. It was sweet. Look, consent issues, but she was so happy to see everybody happy in their dreams.
To see that everyone was okay.
Yeah, everyone was fine, having really nice dreams, and then Rand.
And then the stank eye that Lanfear gives Egwene.
My question, no, I'm like, how long did she stand there before she pieced out? Like, that's my question. I know that the episode cut, how long do we think she stood there and watched the two of them, like, have dream sex? Because obviously the episode cuts off pretty I mean, the jacket comes off and that's as far as we get, but I'm curious, like, did Egwene stay a little bit longer than that? Like,
I mean, maybe Egwene's into voyeurism.
We don't know.
Maybe she's a little bit of a masochist, just watching the broken heart.
I feel like when she started shouting, that's when she woke up.
Yeah, probably.
Maybe. Yeah, it could be.
It's like nightmare kind of situation.
Yeah. One of my favorite scenes, and I think about it repeatedly, is with Swan and Matt when she is where they're talking about the horn, and just it's so funny. It's so funny. It just the way that Swan is like, yeah, oh my gosh, it's you. There's no way you'd be crazy enough to do this. Like, who would do this? And just like the dawning realization on Matt's face, realizing the level to which he is fucked up. And Swan just being like, would you like me to take it from you? And he's like, yep, please take it. Yeah. And she's like, great, excellent.
She doesn't make it an order. It's like a suggestion, which I think is it just indicates how savvy she is as a politician and everything. But like, and I had to ask Sophie too about that scene, because I was like, it was so fun to see Swan this season, kind of stripped down and not just Amerlin. Like, we got to see her sort of at her most informal with characters, and I really, and also interacting with more characters. Like, it was great having her with, the girls at the little pub or whatever that was, that little bar. Just getting to see her bounce off of more cast this season was really fun. I mean, now I'm thinking back to when Sophie told me this was her favorite season.
Jesus.
In everything that came out, she told me that it was her favorite season. Like, that's, I mean, look, I'm not gonna, that's her thoughts, but she said it was her favorite season, so I don't know what to tell you.
You know what? As I can see, as a theater actress, as a stage actress, I can see why she would say this.
Yeah.
Say that. Because I think she got to do she got to go a lot of places this season.
Yeah.
I mean, just like her interactions with Shora Akdashlu alone were like chef's kiss. Like two like great, fantastic actresses who are just like going head to head in a scene together, and just there are so many different levels to it and whatnot. And so I can see why she would say that. I might disagree that it's my favorite season.
Yeah.
There were a lot of things that well, that's not true. I think I would still probably say that season 3 is my favorite, but there were some things that I did not like, let's say.
Yeah.
I was not a fan of, but still I can see why she would why that would be her opinion of it.
From a performance standpoint, and also getting to interact with as many cast members and getting such a wide range of stuff to do, like you said, between the politicking, between the emotional Sorain scene in Teleran Riyadh, between kind of us seeing Swan more stripped down to, like, I think as an actor, when you get more range like that, I can understand why that would be really enticing, as opposed to just sitting in a great hall with a heavy headdress on, having to deliver like really stiff exposition. So from a performance standpoint, I can see why she would say that this was her favorite season.
I mean, she had so much more to do than in previous season too. Like,
yeah.
Oh yeah.
Previous season, she was there for 1-2 episodes, and that was it. So
yeah, for sure.
Well, yeah, it's been a great chat.
the way you're saying that, Matt, we are believing you so.
The way you're saying that is so crazy. It's so
Sorry,
crazy.
look, y'all, I'm going to be really honest. I drank like 30 milligrams of THC drinks last night, so when I say it's been a fun chat, I mean it. It's just baby boy is a little
bliss.
a little doozy.
I mean,
Yeah.
I may have taken something last night to sort of help me relax because it was kind of a emotional roller coaster. I went from having probably one of the best days of my career and like talking, one of the best weeks, I should say, because I did some really great interviews with people, to the Friday at 3:00 news.
Yeah.
So Friday especially was kind of a roller coaster. So after I was done for the day, I turned to my husband. I said, maybe there can be a gummy in my future. And we did that, and we ordered pizza, and we kind of just had a decompressed night, and it was and then I took a melatonin on top of that and had probably one of the best sleeps I've had.
I was gonna say, you were out then. You were.
Yep.
Oh, that sounds good.
It was incredible. So to your point, Matt, I totally understand the need to just sort of, because last night I needed it for sure.
Yeah.
You wanna know my roller coaster? It's like I put an offer on a house like 3 hours before the show got cancelled.
Yes.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah.
Congrats.
Wow.
And the offer got accepted like today. So it's been a bit like that.
That's exciting though. Look, we're still kind of on the house hunt, which is a mixed bag. But yeah, that's so exciting.
Yeah, I hate saying this, and I probably wasn't gonna say it public, but it's fine. Like I've been having a pretty good week so far. So when I heard about the news, I was like, well, this is very sad, and I'm getting offline because I don't want anybody else's sad getting in my sphere, because I'm in a good mood and I'm, like Kat said, in the protect my peace era. So like I feel very bad for people who are not feeling as okay as I am. I mean, I'm not okay that the show is canceled.
Yeah.
That came out wrong.
No, I get what you mean though. I think I felt kind of bad because I got invited to be on the Dusty Wheel like an hour out, 2 hours after the news broke, which I did, but I also felt like I was kind of the more pragmatic party among the group because of just having a foot in the industry and sort of knowing like the boring answer to so much of this is just the money. But I also, like I said there, I've just had to really sort of shield my heart around things like this because this is my job, and I have loved so many shows that have gotten canceled that if I fell into a pit of despair every time a show that I was championing and covering and watching got canceled, I would just never be able to dig myself out. And as much as like I'm trying to, I'm at the point where I'm not too optimistic, but I'm also not going to be pessimistic about the future of the show. But at the same time, I'm also like, well, I have to cover 20 other shows that are on right now, so I have to sort of focus on those too. You know, Murderbot and Duster and Last of Us. And
I was going to ask what other shows you cover that you really enjoy.
Yeah, I mean Murderbot for sure. If you're not watching that, it is on Apple TV, which I've seen people say could be a potential new home.
I've heard that
for the show. I mean, Murderbot is a joint Apple Paramount production, so Stranger Things had happened. Murderbot I loved. It got me reading the book series. Duster I'm a fan of. That's on the unrebranded HBO Max.
I was trying to see where you were gonna go, and yes,
I can't with HBO. It's just I saw someone post like a progression or deprogression of the symbol of the logo, and I just find it so funny.
Formerly HBO Go, HBO Now, then it was HBO Max, then it was Max again, now it's back to HBO Max. But yeah, Duster, which is a 70s crime thriller created by J.J. Abrams and LaToya Morgan, starring Josh Holloway from Lost, and it's just it's just a fun, show that doesn't take itself too seriously. But it gets dramatic, but it's also, action comedy sort of thing too. I have been enjoying Last of Us. I know other people sort of have not, but it's really kind of been funny to me to see that this is sort of exactly the same parallel response that the games got, where people were just mad that, a certain character died, and also there's gay stuff now. Like, it's like, okay.
Gosh, when the game came out, the voice actress for that character suffered so much.
It was rough.
Yeah. But it's just rough. It's ironic, maybe not, to see that TV audiences are having the same problem with the show. I loved season 2. They very clearly have a plan in place for more. So, trying to think if there's anything else that I just finished binging season 3 of the Gilded Age Screeners, which that's another show near and dear to my heart, and not just because there's a bunch of Broadway people on it, but Christine Baranski remains a queen.
That show is
so I'm going to be reviewing that. Other than that, I sort of just go where I'm also really, I do find myself more in the genre sphere, like sci-fi, fantasy, period drama. I feel like there has to be, like, I'm less interested in shows that don't have some kind of hook along those lines, and maybe that just speaks to the little girl that wanted to read all the sci-fi and fantasy at the library. But like, it took me until the final season of Succession to get into watching Succession, and even so.
So I think we're about at our time. So as we wrap things up, Carly, where can our listeners find you? And y'all should find her, because she got a lot of great content.
Content. Hashtag content. Yeah.
Hashtag content,
I mostly on Blue Sky these days, under @CarlyLane. I will post to X, but really it's just because sometimes I have things to share in terms of work things, but honestly I try not to really be on there as much because the algorithm is trash. I have an Instagram. I don't really use it, to be honest. I mostly use it to follow other people. So if you follow me on there, I think it's Carly Lane Perry on there. I don't really post a lot, so sorry in advance. I'm just I'm bad at Instagram. So yeah, it's mostly Blue Sky, if anything. And then I sort of also am lurking various Wheel of Time Discords. So you've probably seen me in a few. I think I'm in like 4 or 5 now. Now I have to join yours Discord. I'll pop in, but yeah.
This one is a lot more quiet. So.
Yeah. That's fine, because
it's a little bit more chill.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I'm more of a lurker, to be honest, which I think other people can speak to for sure. But I try to pop in on Discord occasionally too, when I'm not running around like a chicken with my head cut off, because I've got so many things to do. So yeah, and then I am senior TV editor on Collider, so you will occasionally see my writings and reviews and interviews go up there.
Very nice.
And a couple of profiles that I have a couple of profiles coming out in the coming weeks, so check those out, because
awesome.
they take a lot of work.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Yeah, seriously, I can imagine. Yeah. And you said you're doing The Gilded Age is one of the shows that you're reviewing?
Well, now I can probably say this now. I don't think it's not really a secret, but I'm profiling Carrie Coon. So she was the person that I spoke to earlier this week, for specifically season 3 of Gilded Age. We're sort of in that season of Emmy, for your consideration period.
Oh, yeah.
So it benefits me as a TV critic because now I can do interviews with people because their publicists and their representatives are like, we're trying to push them for awards considerations. So you get some time with people because of that. But
nice.
That's always
Definitely
a nice bonus.
Well,
okay.
Thank you very much for listening to this episode of The Queers of Time. As always, you can find us on Blue Sky, Tumblr, Discord, TikTok, Instagram, those kind of thing. Join our Discord. It's quiet, but it's nice. And whatever. And if you want to support us...
I love the build.
I'm always like that.
It always comes. I'm always waiting for Camille. When is Camille going to bail during that the whole ending of the episode spiel? And it's somehow always different.
And yes, we also have a Patreon. If you want to support us, it's always very much appreciated because, hey, making a podcast does have a cost. Thank you very much for listening. Bye.
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 Thank you all for listening. This was Queers of Time, a Wheel of Time podcast. The music is Dance of the Witches by Julius H.